destroyed, basically, at the Norman Conquest. So when it says about the time, it means before. That's how proper interpretation of that is. And that brings us back to a massively decentralized system of government, like what Blackstone was talking about in our first quote from the Hierarchies document, where there's all kinds of little courts down at the grassroots level where neighbors and friends in responsibly self-governing communities form the juries, and we decide who goes to jail in our communities and who doesn't. Nobody else. No Roman Empire model of civil municipal government and your black-robed tyrants coming in here and telling us how to run our administration of justice. We're doing it with our own juries. We're following due process of law, and we don't need any help from despotic judicial officers. So that's kind of a nice summary that I wanted to put together to kind of explain the overview of why we're arranging in the USA in the 12 superstates model, because it gets to the biblical 144,000 at the more centralized and more national, larger jurisdictions. There's more chips on the table, and so those political subdivisions have greater complexity, and the number 12 is quite beautiful in metaphysics for dealing with complex issues. The simpler, just keeping the peace duties of the counties, the precincts, and the townships at the tens, hundreds, and thousands levels are just political subdivisions of 10. But this is why, Lewis, if you might pull up the map of our United States of America, how we're subdividing the 12 superstates. Yes, thank you, Lewis. This allows for delegates, representatives, to come together to form a supreme jury under the higher common law. If you look at the 7th Amendment to the U.S. Constitution, the wording indicates that the common law and trial by jury invokes higher systems of law over all of the Roman Empire stuff that was the problem under England. That's why we revolted, was to get away from the Roman Empire top-down authoritarian law, but that's still persisted with us. The advocates of Roman Empire municipal law have never given up. They're relentless. They're well-financed, and they thrive off of the slave trade. And that's how they're treating us under master-servant relationships. We're all just a bunch of slaves to them. And that's going to continue until we start bringing about a common law model of government with delegates from each of the superstates that are shown on the map here. This gives us a supreme jury. If we've got a supreme jury for the USA that's organically accountable to the constituency, like this map clearly is designed to facilitate, then we've got organic law in place. Organic law is higher law. It's promoting responsibly self-governing communities. That's all these superstate jurisdictions are, is responsibly self-governing communities, separate, fully sovereign, and then when those sovereign entities come together, then that's a real, legitimate, organic government for the USA. So I've kind of wrapped that up a bit there. I would like to pause at this moment to ask anybody if they've got comments or questions on this brief overview and introduction here. I yield. Anybody?
Open floor.
If I may, Michael in Florida.
Michael, yes.
I think it would be advantageous for us to parallel the districts, create the super states parallel to the Federal Reserve districts. Is that, I know we had talked about that privately prior, but is that something you have considered or anyone else would like to comment on? Because I think in the future, there is going to be an uprising to expose and hold accountable the Federal Reserve districts. And if we had super states parallel to those districts, I think that might be a great leveraging advantage for us. I yield. Thank you.
Thank you, Michael.
This is David.
David, yes.
Well, I've done a little bit of research on how those districts started in the first place. Not specifically the Federal Reserve District, but districts after the formation of this country were started so that for the purpose of taxation, and it was a top-down type of a thing. So I know that this appears to be top-down also. I've even commented on that. But I think that trying to model something parallel after, the federal government's taxation design is not from the ground up. I yield.
If I might respond.
Go ahead, Michael.
Yeah, the modeling and the parallel aspect is not after their structure, but just the geographical orientation. And that would be an advantage to those of us that would like to hold them accountable. We would have standing being in that particular district. And if we, had a parallel superstate district, that would just facilitate our organizing all the better to expose and combat their unlawful actions lawfully. I yield.
Thank you. If I might briefly, there's a number of undercurrents here that are complicated. I don't think you drew out the point, Michael, that coincidentally the metaphysics of the number 12 is being respected by the Federal Reserve banking system. They have 12 districts similar to what we've got in the superstates here, but they're just allocating the geographical territory in different manners. And a quick point there is that the Federal Reserve has taken liberties in drawing lines between some of the states. All the states aren't fully whole, complete in one Federal Reserve district or the other. Some of the states are divided between two Federal Reserve districts. So that's a footnote of concern there. And a similar powerful undercurrent is to the municipal civil Roman model court system of the Supreme Court. They've got, again, they're at least respecting the number 12. They've got 12 circuit courts under the Supreme Court of the United States. So that number of 12 is being reaffirmed redundantly because the metaphysics, the spiritual side of all of this, the people behind the scenes, even the dark side, they know how the metaphysics works, and they're harmonizing therewith. And that touches on the geographical distribution issues too, because when our Supreme Court of Law is organized in this manner of 12, then to address your issue, Michael, we could do that, even though there are states that are being divided, and we're an organic entity. They're statutory. The Federal Reserve banking districts are statutory. The circuit courts of the federal government are statutory. They're static. They're lifeless. They're little empire fiefdoms that are carved out for their separate private corporate jurisdictions. But we're moving organically. and the nature of the spiritual battle before us, we need to be flexible, and we can be flexible. If there is another map, maybe Lewis, in the left column, can you click on organic divisions there, Lewis, and yeah, near the center there. Okay, see, part of why I drew the original map the way I did was because of an organic law called proportional representation. When we're talking about God, it's like the hundreds and the thousands, and the communities are supposed to be of approximately equal population. And working with the United States House of Representatives, I've got a separate superstate map here that is dividing a lot of the big states. Like California, you can see real easy how Northern and Southern California are divided there. And New York is also divided. Those are two of the biggest states in the Union. And but this is for moving forward in confronting the United States House of Representatives. This last map that is more proportionally balanced would be more appropriate. And for addressing financial issues, including the Federal Reserve banking system. See now, Michael, this map would probably be better to be using for trying to interact with the Federal Reserve banking system, because this map does not respect state lines either. As you can see, New York and California are split. The Federal Reserve banking map also splits certain states, even though they don't do it. They don't do it in proportionally balanced manners like this. See, it's an important element of organic law to have equal economic resources and equal attention and equal sovereignty and equal military capabilities, self-policing, self-governing capabilities from each of the approximately equal populations. The other map, the original map, the main map that we're working with here for these superstates, is more applicable. Thank you, Lewis. More applicable for the U.S. Senate, because if in attempts to try to engineer a painless and nonviolent revolution, we're going to need to be interacting with both the House of Representatives and the Senate. And those two bodies are geared differently. The Senate would be more appropriate for the main superstate map, where we're not messing with any of the boundary lines of the states. We'll leave them as sovereign entities by themselves, and at that point we could, like especially when the Senate counts the votes for the election here for the president, if we had our ducks lined up better, we would be in a position in that United States Senate to send in our judicial officers as representatives of each of the superstates here and as electors from the superstates to verbally declare our vote right there in real time. They wouldn't have to open it by mail. There's so many things that we can do, but to step back a little bit, there's two modes of interacting here. One of them is through the Senate and focusing on these fully undivided state jurisdictions as they're commonly known, and the other is to go ahead and disrespect the state lines a little bit. Maybe that's the wrong term, or take liberties is probably better with the state geographical markings, so that we're only working with 435 U.S. representatives divided in a balanced, proportionally balanced manner that is more organically accountable to the people. So I You're making an excellent question, Michael, but it's a bit complicated. I do hope I've responded. Maybe others would like to ask questions too. I yield.
This is Nikki in Pennsylvania.
Nikki.
Yes, when you're talking about the Senate, are you talking about the Article 1, Section 3 Senate, or are you talking about the 17th